There's a moment in every scientist's career where they look at their data, look at what they've just done, and think, okay, we are never doing that again. And then there are the ones who didn't even get that far because someone else had to shut it down for them. Today we're going through 10 experiments that got stopped cold the moment someone realized what was actually happening inside the lab, or the prison, or the city. Let's just get into it. From 1951 to 1974, that's 23 years, researchers from the University of Pennsylvania used inmates at Holmesburg prison as test subjects. They paid them a few dollars, they exposed them to chemical warfare agents, radioactive isotopes, hallucinogens, and experimental cosmetics. One researcher, Dr. Albert Kligman, famously said, and I'm quoting, "All I saw before me was acres of skin. The inmates developed rashes, burns, and long-term health problems that followed them for life." The program ran for over 2 decades before it was finally exposed and shut down in 1974. When you hear about informed consent in modern medicine, this is one of the reasons why. Because for 23 years at Holmesburg, it didn't exist at all. In 1967, a Palo Alto high school teacher named Ron Jones wanted to teach his students about fascism, so he invented a movement, complete with a salute, a slogan, membership cards, and strict rules about who could join. What was supposed to last one day turned into an entire week, because the students didn't just participate, they became true believers. They started policing each other's behavior, reporting rule breakers, recruiting others. By day 4, over 200 students had joined what they genuinely believed was a national political movement. Jones realized he hadn't just taught fascism, he had accidentally built it inside a California high school. On day 5, he gathered everyone in an auditorium, revealed it was all an experiment, and showed them footage of Nazi rallies. He never repeated it and later described it as one of the most terrifying experiences of his life. I feel like if your lesson plans ends with you becoming scared of your own students, maybe you took a wrong turn somewhere. In 1939, speech pathologist Wendell Johnson gathered 22 orphan children in Iowa. Half of them spoke perfectly normally. That didn't matter. For months, he and his team told them that they had severe speech problems, that their stuttering was getting worse, that they should avoid speaking unless they could do it perfectly. He was trying to prove that stuttering was learned, not biological, so he actively tried to create it, and he succeeded. Several of them who had never stuttered in their lives developed lifelong speech disorders. The study was never published. Johnson buried it. It didn't surface until 2001 when the University of Iowa finally issued an apology, over 60 years later. Okay, thanks, I guess, real timely. In 1963, neuroscientist Jose Delgado stood alone in a bull ring in Spain. Fully grown fighting bull was released and charged directly at him. Delgado had implanted an electrode into the bull's brain, specifically into the caudate nucleus, which controls aggression and movement. He pressed a button on a radio transmitter, the bull skidded to a halt, turned away, completely docile. He had literally stopped a charging bull with a remote control. Delgado called it the stimoceiver and believed brain implants could cure everything from epilepsy to aggression. Then he started thinking about what a government might do with that technology, remote-controlled soldiers, pacified populations, and essentially walked away from his own discovery. He spent the rest of his career warning about the very thing he had invented, which sounds a lot like a sci-fi villain origin story, except he was the one who said, okay, maybe don't. In 1950, the US Navy conducted a biological warfare simulation off the coast of San Francisco. They loaded ships with massive quantities of 2 bacteria, Serratia marcescens and Bacillus globigi, and they sprayed them into the air over the city. Their goal was to see how a biological weapon would disperse through a populated area. They tracked the bacteria spreading across the entire Bay Area. Then, within weeks, 11 patients at Stanford Hospital developed serious Serratia infections. One of them died. The Navy denied everything. It wasn't until 1976, 26 years later, that the truth came out. The military had literally germ warfare tested its own citizens without telling anyone, without consent, without a single warning. Isn't history so fun? For 17 years, from 1978 to 1995, the CIA and US Army ran a top secret program investigating whether psychic abilities could be used for military intelligence. They called it remote viewing. They hired people who claimed they could see locations, objects, and events thousands of miles away using only their mind. They tasked them with locating hostages, describing secret Soviet facilities, and predicting future events. The project burned through over $20 million. In 1995, the CIA declassified the program and released a report concluding that remote viewing had failed to produce actionable intelligence. The program was shut down, but here's the thing. Several of the remote viewers insist to this day that some of their reports were disturbingly accurate. The files are public now, but heavily redacted. So the question isn't whether the government believed in psychics. The question is what's still blacked out and why they kept running it for almost 2 decades if it didn't work. In April 1979, an explosion occurred at a secret Soviet bioweapons facility in the city of Sverdlovsk. A plume of anthrax spores was released into the air. It drifted downwind over the city's southern districts. Within days, people started dying. The official death count was 66, but the real number was almost certainly higher. The Soviet government immediately blamed it on contaminated meat. They confiscated hospital records. They bulldozed the homes of the dead. They maintained the meat story until 1992, when President Boris Yeltsin finally admitted the truth. It was a bioweapons accident at a facility that should have never existed. The lab was permanently dismantled. Scientists were reassigned, and for 13 years, everyone involved looked the world in the eye and said it was just some bad beef. From the 1940s to 1989, a top-secret British facility called Porton Down conducted chemical weapons testing on its own soldiers. This is not ancient history. This ran until the year Taylor Swift was born, which is honestly a very weird way to measure history. Thousands of servicemen were told that they were participating in research to find a cure for the common cold. Instead, they were exposed to sarin, VX, and other nerve agents. In 1953, a 20-year-old Royal Air Force engineer named Ronald Madison died during a sarin exposure test. He was one of the youngest casualties of the program. The Ministry of Defense covered it up for decades. An inquest in 2004 finally ruled his death unlawful. Porton Down still exists, but live human testing of chemical agents stopped. Publicly, at least. Which is the kind of sentence I hate having to end with, but here we are. Between 1945 and 1947, researchers working on the Manhattan Project injected small amounts of plutonium directly into the bodies of 18 American hospital patients. They did not tell the patients what they were doing. They did not ask for permission. The patients were in hospitals for other reasons: broken bones, routine treatments, and the scientists simply added the plutonium to their IVs. They wanted to see how plutonium moved through the human body. They tracked it in excrement, in tissue samples, in autopsies. When investigative journalist Eileen Wellsome uncovered the experiment in the 1990s, it triggered a national scandal. The government settled a class action lawsuit, and President Clinton issued a formal apology in 1995. The research was permanently shut down, but the data collected from those 18 people, data gathered without a single signature on a consent form, was still being cited in radiation safety guidelines for decades. After World War II, scientists at Los Alamos kept a 6.2 kilogram sphere of plutonium. It was originally meant for a third nuclear bomb, but the war ended before it was used. So they started running what were called criticality experiments, basically pushing the plutonium right to the edge of a nuclear chain reaction, then backing off at the last moment. In August 1945, physicist Harry Daghlian was working alone at night. He dropped a tungsten carbide brick onto the core. There was a blue flash, he absorbed a massive radiation dose, and died 25 days later. Less than a year after that, in May 1946, physicist Louis Slotin was demonstrating the exact same type of experiment to colleagues. He was using a screwdriver to keep two halves of a beryllium reflector apart. The screwdriver slipped, the reflector closed, blue flash, Slotin felt heat in his hands and tasted acid in his mouth. He was dead 9 days later. 7 other people in the room survived, but several developed radiation-related cancers years later. 2 deaths from the exact same plutonium sphere in under a year. After Slotin, Los Alamos permanently banned all hands-on criticality experiments. No one has done one since. I don't know, maybe, just maybe, holding a nuclear reaction open with a screwdriver was not the best move ever. Alright guys, that has been our list for today. Thanks so much for checking it out. I've been your host today, Olivia Kozlowski, and I will see you again soon. Bye!